Hey Wolfpack, and welcome back. I hope you all are doing well. Tonight, we'll be listening to 3 creepy stalker encounters. With that said, whether you're sitting around a campfire, on the night shift, or even laying in bed, let my voice soothe your nightmares. My family has had a stalker since before I was even born. He's been abducting my family members one by one. It's only me left now. My first encounter with him was when I was about 6 years old. I found him standing in our living room, cradling our cat, Saida, in his arms. His hollow eyes looked at me, and his gaze seemed to paralyze me. I didn't say anything, and neither did he. When I eventually snapped out of the trance, I ran to get my mother. But by the time we got back to the living room, he was already gone, and so was Saida. After that, I learned about our family stalker. My mother told my crying 6-year-old self how he followed us. Wherever we go, he would always be there, waiting for an opportunity to strike. He had been the cause of several of our relatives' disappearances, including my father's. I didn't understand why anyone would do that, and I still don't. But all my mother had to say about it was, "That's how it is, and there's nothing we can do about it." I didn't see him again until 4 years later. He had been spotted following my grandfather around. Despite our desperate attempts to chase him away, he would always come back. Then, one day, my grandfather was gone. He had been taken. We didn't see our stalker for a good couple of years, but I could still feel his presence. Though I couldn't see him, I knew that he was always there, hiding and waiting. The next victim was my mother. Unlike in my grandfather's case, I didn't see my mother's kidnapping coming. The day she was taken started like any other. I left at noon to see my therapist, and when I got home, she was nowhere to be found. The abductions continued like that, one after another. My family members were taken away. Eventually, I was all alone. Then, I met Ivy. I met her in my therapist's waiting room. We were both frequent visitors, so we would often stumble upon each other. Funny how something that started as friendly small talk would turn into a real friendship. Ivy was, well, like me, a lonely and lost soul. From her, I learned that my family wasn't the only one to encounter him. She had apparently met him several times as well, and she told me she was no longer afraid of him. To be honest, I sometimes long for him. All the times I imagine him taking me away, somewhere far from here. Somewhere I can no longer feel sorrow. She told me. I was horrified. I begged her to stay. I told her that I needed her, and that I could not bear the thought of losing her as well. She was my best friend, my only friend. She hugged me, and promised me that she would never leave me, as long as I promised to be there for her. But I broke my promise. One morning, I woke up to a missed call from Ivy. She hadn't left any messages, and when I tried to call her back, she wouldn't answer. With a lump gradually growing in my throat, I hurried over to her place, unlocking the door with an extra key that she gave me. When stepping into her home, my fears were confirmed. She was gone. She had written me a note though, saying that she went with him voluntarily. She apologized for leaving, but she was sure that we would meet again someday. I was angry. Furious that she would leave me, leave with the man that had hurt us both so much. But I would soon turn that anger towards myself. I wasn't there when she needed me. If I had answered her call, she might not have left. This happened about a year ago. Since then, I've decided not to leave my home unless absolutely necessary. I avoid people as much as possible. If I let anyone into my life, they will only be taken away from me. It's too late for me to befriend anyone anyway, as it's my turn soon. He's watching me. I heard a knock on the door a few days ago, and when looking through the peephole, I saw his white face, framed by the same black hood that he wore the first time I met him. I haven't looked any more times, but I know he's still standing there. Any day he will let himself in and take me away, but I no longer care. After all, there's nothing I can do about it. Fresh meat! A metallic clang rang out as someone was slammed into a locker, followed by hyenic laughing. I glanced down the hall to see the commotion. as did so many other students. A pack of guys in Letterman jackets were tormenting someone. All right, clear out, get to class. A teacher was waving her arms around at them, like she was swatting some flies away. In seconds, the hallway cleared out. I crammed the last of my books into my bag and slammed my locker shut. I started to head to class, but stopped and looked over my shoulder and let out a sigh. There were books and papers scattered all over the hall. A thin, mousy-looking girl was bent over, frantically trying to gather up the papers. Here, let me help you, I said, approaching her. Dropping my bag on the floor next to her, I started shuffling papers together in a pile. Are you new? She looked up at me with big eyes, bit her lip, and nodded. She looked like she might burst into tears at any minute. Been there. I laughed, trying to reassure her. Just keep your head down. They'll move on eventually. You just have to wait it out till they find someone newer. I stood up, handing her a stack of papers. Thanks, she said meekly. She hesitated for a minute before speaking again. I'm Emma. She had a hopeful look in her eyes. I groaned inwardly. She wanted to be friends. I was going to be saddled with a new girl. I'm Olivia, Liv. I gave her a small smile, and she smiled in return. The new girl was going to latch onto me, wasn't she? I gotta get to class. The bell's going to ring. Yeah, me too, she mumbled. Thanks again. See you around. I pushed it out of my mind until lunchtime later that day. I was sitting at a table with my best friend, Sam. She sounds like a weirdo. Sam rolled her eyes. She was on some new diet fad, so she picked at some french fries instead of eating a real lunch. Seemed like a load of crap to me. What kind of diet lets you eat cheese fries? Hey, be nice, I said. Sam was pretty snarky, but she was my only friend, and she kept the bullies away from me. No, I mean it. Some new kid shows up at school, it's guaranteed a clique will scoop them up within the first 5 minutes. If no one does, there's something wrong with them. Sam continued, stabbing the air with a fry to emphasize her point. Maybe she's just having a hard time adjusting, I replied. Okay, now you sound like my mom. I mean, what if you're the only person who's been nice to her, and she thinks you guys are like friends or something, and then she falls in love with you and starts stalking you? Now, you're the weirdo, I said, rolling my eyes. Oh my god, Sam whispered, suddenly dropping her voice. Tell me that is not her. I turned to see where Sam was looking. Standing in the middle of the lunchroom was Emma, and she looked terrified. She looked lost. She wasn't even holding a lunch tray. Some of the other tables were snickering at her already. She was scanning the lunchroom, probably looking for me. I turned around quickly, hoping she wouldn't spot me. Have fun with your new girlfriend, Sam murmured, getting up from the table just as Emma approached. Hi, Liv, she said, with a big smile. Can I sit here? She sat down without even waiting for a response. Sure, I said, not feeling like I had much of a choice. No lunch? I took a huge bite of my sandwich, hoping to prolong having to talk to her. She didn't really seem that bad, but I didn't really want a lost little puppy following me around either. It had taken months to get people to start leaving me alone. No, I'm not hungry. First day jitters, you know? I nodded, still chewing so I wouldn't have to talk. Emma just sort of smiled at me nervously and looked around. She was so awkward. The air grew tense between us. So, tell me about yourself, I said, feigning interest. Oh, well, I just moved here, obviously. My mom's in the military, so we move around a lot, and I don't really get to see her that much. I replied, taking another huge bite, nodding. So, Emma laughed nervously. Thankfully, the bell rang, freeing me from an awkward torment. I shoved the rest of the sandwich in my mouth and stood up to put my lunch tray away. Would you want to hang out sometime? Emma blurted out. I nodded dismissively. I could barely hear her over the noise of all the other kids rushing to clean up and get to class. It didn't even occur to me what I had agreed to until I was out of the lunchroom. The rest of the day passed uneventfully until dismissal, when Sam and I were walking towards the buses. "Hey, check it out, your stalker's here," Sam snickered as we approached the parking lot. Sure enough, Emma was hanging around outside the school's doors. She looked like she was anxiously awaiting someone, while also trying and failing to look inconspicuous. I sighed and stopped walking for a minute. Annoyance spread over me. Sam stopped too, reading me. After a second, she pulled me along. "Come on, I'll cover for you." I let Sam lead me down the hall. I was vaguely aware she was walking a little bit closer to me, and she had her "don't mess with me" face on. "Oh, hey Liv." Emma looked relieved to see me, but she gave Sam a weird look. "Do you take the bus? I was wondering if we could hang out today after school. I was hoping you could help me catch up on some school notes." "Sorry, we have plans," Sam said firmly. I looked between them, not sure of what to do or even say. "Oh, well, maybe you can come over tonight then?" Emma's voice sounded pathetically whiny. "We're having a sleepover." "Oh." Emma's voice just kinda trailed off and she looked at me. I glanced at the ground, my cheeks flushing. "Let's go, Liv," Sam said, pulling me along again. Thankfully, Sam drove herself to school, so I didn't have to worry about Emma following us on the bus. She's starting to make me uncomfortable. Suddenly, she's everywhere. I sighed, climbing into Sam's car. Instinctively, I found myself locking the door as soon as it was shut. "You're too nice for your own good," Sam said, tossing her bag in the back seat and climbing in. "No, I'm not," I said, weakly. "Yeah, you are. You should just tell her to back off. You can't be nice to every lost cause you come across. They're all weirdos." "You were nice to me," I pointed out. That stopped Sam for about a second, and then she frowned at me. "You're not a complete weirdo." "Gee, thanks." I rolled my eyes. "Look, all I'm saying is you have to be careful. You don't know anything about her, where she came from, or why she's here so late in the school year." I didn't have her reply. I knew Sam was right. I'd had enough trouble in school, trusting the wrong people and getting burned by it. I had finally gotten them off my back, was finally slipping under the radar. We were silent the rest of the ride. I didn't live too far from the school, so it wasn't long before Sam was pulling into my driveway. "I'll see you tomorrow. Keep your head down," she said. She was starting to make me nervous. There was genuine concern in her eyes, like Sam knew something I didn't. Emma was just another kid. How bad could she be? "Yeah, thanks," I mumbled, climbing out of her car. "See you tomorrow." I had a hard time focusing on my homework that night. No matter what I was working on, I found myself thinking about Emma. Sam had been right. It was pretty late in the school year for someone to be transferring in. I didn't know anything about her, except that something was off about her. I didn't even know her last name, so I couldn't look her up on Facebook. Thankfully, Emma was nowhere to be found when I arrived at school the next day. Oddly enough, neither was Sam. We always hung out for a few minutes before first period. Maybe she was just out for the day, but Sam was almost never sick. I was so focused on my schoolwork that I almost forgot about Emma until lunch. Sam wasn't sitting at our usual table. Her last class was closer to the lunchroom than mine was, so she usually got there first to claim our table. Instead, Emma was sitting there where Sam normally sat. I thought about spending my lunch period at the library, instead of having to spend it with Emma. As I turned around to leave, a voice rang out. "Liv, hey!" Emma was waving emphatically at me. Immediately, my cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "Hey, Emma." My voice trailed off as I sat down at the table. "I saved our table." "Our table? Have you seen Sam today?" I asked, trying to brush off the uneasy feeling that was creeping through my body. "No, I don't have any classes with her. So, what do you want to do today after school? Do you want to hang out? I think I might need some help with math. I have no idea what's going on, and the teacher wouldn't explain anything to me." I groaned inwardly. She was babbling on and also putting me on the spot. I didn't like to tell people no. I like to avoid confrontation. and a lot of people didn't respond well to being told no. Well, My voice trailed off as I desperately tried to find an excuse to get me out of this. I came up blank. I guess. Great, I'll meet you after school then. Emma started to ramble on about something else, but I excused myself to go to the bathroom. I sat down on a toilet and sighed, almost whining. I pulled my phone out to text Sam and ask where she was. "Where are you today?" Emma asked me to hang out and I couldn't find a way to say no. I held my breath, waiting for a reply. Sam usually answered pretty quickly, even if she was in class. When no reply came, I figured I'd just hide in the bathroom until lunch was over. The rest of the day went too quickly. I tried to will time to move slower, but it was useless. When the final bell rang, I even tried stalling in the bathroom. I waited until I was sure all the buses left before I crept from the bathroom. The hallway was extra quiet as I made my way towards the school doors. The parking lot was empty. The coast seemed clear as I took a step outside. "There you are. I've been waiting for you forever." Emma greeted me with a huge grin, and my heart sank. "Sorry, I had to pee," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew it was a lame excuse. "All the buses left." Emma looked at me expectantly. "That's alright," I sighed, resigned to my fate at this point. "I live close enough that we can walk." Emma perked up at that. "What do you want to talk about?" she asked. "Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? You just moved here, right? Where do you live?" "Oh, the old house on Cooper and Smith. My mom's in the army. I'm an only child, military brat. We move around a lot. Dad ran off when I was little." I knew the house well. It had been on the market for almost a year now, and with no one to maintain the yard. The neighborhood had started to complain. It was starting to look run down and dumpy. I'm sure they had gotten a really good price, and maybe with a new family in it, they could really turn it around. I listened to Emma ramble on while we walked. Maybe I should just tell her to back off like Sam said, but then I thought about how I would feel if someone did that to me. Emma wasn't that bad, right? She was just annoying and clingy and weird. Maybe she would mellow out once she made some more friends. I'd been absorbed in my thoughts and not really paying attention to much, but I felt a flare of irritation as my house came into view. The driveway was empty. My mom wasn't home. I'd have to be alone with Emma. "So, this is where I live," I said, unlocking the front door and letting myself and Emma in. The air in the house seemed still and much more quiet than I'd ever remembered it being. I led her into the kitchen, where I dropped my backpack onto a chair, and Emma did the same. "This is where I usually do my homework," I lied. The last thing I wanted was Emma poking around in my room. "So, you needed help with math, right? Who's your teacher?" I asked her, zipping my bag open and started to unpack notebooks and pens. Mrs. What's-her-name?" Emma waved her hands around while she tried to think. "Gray, frizzy hair, big glasses? Oh, Mrs. Fritz. I have her too. She usually only teaches advanced math classes, except for the one lower-level algebra class. Come to think about it, I'm in algebra, but I don't think I've seen you in class." "Oh, I'm in one of the advanced classes," Emma said. But suddenly, she was having a hard time looking me in the eye. If she was in an advanced math class, how was I supposed to help? As she dug around in her backpack for a notebook, something inside it rattled, and I felt a wave of unease. It kind of sounded like the sound a pill bottle would make. Was she crazy? "I'll be right back. I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick before we start," I said, probably a little too quickly. I tried to walk as casually as I could down the hall to the bathroom, locking the door behind me. I let out a sigh. "Sam, where are you? I need you to come over." I sent another text to Sam, but something told me she wouldn't answer in time. She still hadn't answered my earlier text. I almost cried out in frustration. Something really didn't feel right here. I took a deep breath, splashed some cold water in my face, and despite the thundering heart in my chest, opened the door. She smiled at me when I re-entered the kitchen. A fresh page was open in her notebook, and she had a pen in her hand. "I got us some water. I hope that's okay," she said as I sat down. "Thanks." Actually, I hadn't realized how dry my mouth was. I hoped my shaking hands weren't too noticeable as I raised the glass to my lips and took a long drink from it. It was then that something caught my eye. "Hey, what's that?" I asked, nodding towards Emma's backpack. Through the flap, I could just notice something glinting in the light. "Oh!" Emma put down her pen and pulled out a small jar. It rattled as she set it down on my table. My stomach dropped and my blood froze. It was a jar of teeth. What is that? Why do you have that?" I asked, jumping up from the table. But something wasn't right. My vision swam and my legs started to feel like jelly. My body crumpled to the floor, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't move. "I just like the sound they make." Through blurry eyes, I could see Emma coming around the table towards me with a pair of rusty pliers in her hand. I tried to move, but my body didn't respond. I tried to scream, but my tongue suddenly felt too big for my mouth. I tried to push Emma away, but all I could do was watch my fingers twitch. My screams came out as a quiet, garbled mess as Emma forced my mouth open and shoved the disgusting tool in. Then, my mouth exploded into white-hot pain. I tried to scream in pain. There was a small clink as Emma dropped something white into the jar on the floor next to me, and my mouth filled with a coppery taste. I choked and sputtered as Emma put the pliers back into my mouth. All I could taste was blood as I tried to brace myself for another wave of pain, but it never came. Despite the pain, my eyes were growing heavy. Was this shock? Through drooping eyelids, I watched as Emma jerked her head up. A panicked look spread across her face as she grabbed the jar and hurried to her backpack. But everything sounded like when you play a tape backwards, real slow. I must have blacked out for a bit, because the next thing I knew, my mom was shaking me and screaming. My hair was wet and a pool of blood had formed under my head. I struggled to sit up, but my head swam and there was too of everything. I tried to open my mouth to ask my mom what was happening, but she shoved a wad of paper towels in my mouth. My mom was screaming into her phone. Everything sounded too loud. In minutes, the police showed up. They asked me what had happened and took a statement from my mom. They loaded me up into an ambulance and took me to a hospital to treat the gaping hole in my mouth. A couple days later, the police came back to talk to us again. The hospital had ran some tests and concluded I had been drugged. They also did some research on Emma. No new students had started at school recently, and the house she claimed she lived at? Well, someone had hidden the for sale sign, but inside it looked like a crack house. It was obvious someone had been squatting there. Inside one of the bedroom closets, the police had found the body of a woman who had been reported missing a few weeks earlier. She had been tied up and blindfolded, and someone had removed all of her teeth. They were having trouble tracking down Emma, and no one had seen Sam in a few days either. My mom's harassing the school, asking how someone could have been wandering the halls and impersonating a student without anyone knowing. No one has any answers. Hi, my name is Jess. I'm 18 years old, and I'm currently writing this at a police station in Missouri. I just wanted to start this off by saying that I know who my stalker is. He's a kid I went to school with in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. His name is Will, and he was the kind of guy that everyone had a crush on in middle school, except for me. He has black hair and hazel eyes. I'm not saying that I didn't think he was a cute guy. Of course I did. It's just that he knew that every girl, and even some of the guys, were practically begging at his feet to be with him, and he took advantage of that. He used his good looks to persuade people to do his homework for him, and to get him answers for tests. Those are the kinds of things that made me not want to be with him. I've also never thought of myself as pretty, but when Will came up to me one day at the beginning of 7th grade, and asked me if I wanted to go to the movies with him sometime, I was completely and utterly shocked. He had also never asked me to do his homework for him, which I thought was odd, because he took advantage of practically everyone in the school. Still, I wasn't interested in being with him. I awkwardly but politely declined, and things just escalated from there. He constantly nagged me to go out with him, and I told him no every time. The more he begged me, the more I disliked him. He somehow found out when my birthday was, probably through asking my friends, and he got me a birthday present every year. He would always get me surprisingly expensive Christmas presents too. One year, he bought me this gorgeous necklace from James Avery that had a little heart pendant on it. It was beautiful, but I never wore it because I didn't want Will to think that I was warming up to the idea of someday being with him. I told my parents about how uncomfortable Will made me feel, but they obviously couldn't do anything to get him in trouble because he had never posed as a threat to me. My mom and dad just thought it was an innocent crush, and I guess I thought that too. Although, Will always made me squirm in my seat whenever he talked to me. He also took every opportunity to be near me in school. Through all of middle school, my friends and I sat at the same table. The table had 2 chairs on each side, and 1 chair at the end of it. There were never any open seats because I had the same 5 friends throughout middle school. Even though there was no room to sit, every day Will would come over to our table, pull up a chair next to me, even though he was pretty much sitting behind me due to the lack of room. The girls in our school would swoon every time they were within 50 feet of Will, so they practically had a heart attack when he would come and sit at our table. The constant cycle of giving me gifts, other girls at school pretty much willing to give up their firstborn child to be in my shoes, and me rejecting Will went on throughout 7th and 8th grade. Nothing ever really got worse during those 2 years, and I was hoping that one day Will would just take a hint and get over me, but he never did. There were 2 high schools in my town, but only 1 middle school and 1 elementary school. I'm not really sure why. So you would have the same kids in your classes from kindergarten up to 9th grade, and then some of those kids would go to one high school, and the other kids would go to the other one. You can't even imagine my relief when on the first day of 9th grade, I found out that Will ended up going to the other school. It felt as if a literal weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I didn't realize how much of a burden Will was until I didn't have to deal with him anymore. Everything was fine for the first few days of school. I enjoyed my classes, I had good friends, and I didn't need to worry about Will anymore. On maybe the 4th day of school, I got an email from Will. He probably obtained it through my friends as well, though he had to have had it a few months back since I hadn't seen him since May of 8th grade. I still remember the message very distinctly, since it freaked me out a lot. The email read, "Hey Jess, it sucks that we don't go to the same school anymore. I tried transferring, but my parents won't let me. They don't understand our love. I miss talking to you every day. At least I'm still able to see your face. That's enough for me. P.S. You looked very pretty today." Inserted below Will's message was a picture of me from that afternoon walking home from school. I remember the email scaring me more than anything had ever scared me before. I immediately showed it to my parents, and they contacted Will's school, who contacted Will's mom. The only thing that ended up happening to Will was that his mother had to keep an eye on him at all times, just to make sure that he didn't continue to spy on me. Since then, I was too uncomfortable to walk home from school, so I wanted to be driven home every day. Neither of my parents got off work until 5 o'clock, and my school ended at 3:15. I ended up joining an after-school video game club that ran until 4:45, just so that my parents could pick me up. After a few months of nothing happening with Will, I guess his mom figured out he was fine, so she stopped keeping an eye on him. I then received another email. This one was just a picture of me in the car after school with no message. I showed my mom, and she got in contact with Will's mom again. She said she would continue to watch Will, although I don't think she did. From there, I was constantly receiving emails from Will, and they were all of me doing everyday things, such as working on homework in my bedroom, or walking through the mall with my friends. Eventually, we got the police involved, because Will was genuinely stalking me, and the emails were harassment. I don't know what kind of punishment Will received, but he didn't send any more emails for the rest of high school. After I graduated, I moved a few states over for university. I thought I would finally be safe, because no one would be insane enough to move states over just to follow a love interest. Needless to say, I was wrong. My best friend since 4th grade, Bree, was also accepted in the same university that I was. We both moved and made sure that we roomed together. Everything was perfect for the first 2 months of university, and then I received another email from Will. Of course, I blocked the original email back when he was sending me stalkerish pictures of myself, so I assumed he created a new one just so that he could continue to message me. The email said, "What's going on, Jess? I haven't seen you for a while. Have you forgotten about me? I sure hope not. I've missed you, my love." My heart sank into my stomach as my eyes scanned over the message. I thought I was finally rid of that creep, and the fact that I moved to a completely different state and Will had somehow still managed to find me just shows that I wasn't dealing with any typical stalker. I had no idea what Will's intentions were with following me this far. Did he just genuinely want to be with me, but had no idea how many boundaries he crossed? Did he just want to kidnap me? Did he want to kill me so he could literally be with me forever? I had no idea what to think. The first thing I did after I read the email was show it to Bree. My family was hundreds of miles away, so there was nothing that they could do. Bree was my only option, and I trusted her to help me with this situation. She came to the conclusion that we weren't safe here. We didn't know what Will wanted with me. She decided that we should leave and get as far away from here as we could, and we needed to leave immediately. Luckily, we both had enough money saved up so we could afford a sufficient amount of gas. We already had food and water bottles in our kitchen, so we grabbed a cooler and stuck as much of it as we could into it. We packed a bag of clothes, toiletries, chargers, blankets, pillows, and our laptops into our suitcases and headed out. We had no idea where to go, so we just drove. We were both constantly checking behind us in the rearview mirror, just to make sure that no one was following us. Everything was fine for the first hour of the trip. No one was trailing our car, at least no one we could see, and we figured that we would be okay. A little after an hour, Bree had to use the bathroom. I was still paranoid about being followed, so I was a little hesitant about pulling into a gas station, but it's not like Bree could pee in a bottle. So we drove into the nearest and least sketchiest gas station that we could find. I didn't have to use the bathroom, so I waited in the car while Bree went inside and did her business. There was only one other car in the parking lot. It was a red Toyota Corolla with a cracked left headlight and a small dent on the hood of the car. I constantly checked to make sure that all the doors were locked, and I literally had 911 on my dial pad ready to call just in case. I didn't see anyone get out of the Toyota when I pulled into the gas station parking lot, so I guess they were already out of the car. Bree had been in the bathroom for nearly 10 minutes, so I was getting concerned. I decided to call her, and she picked up almost immediately. I asked her what she was doing, and she said that she saw Will in the gas station pacing up and down the aisles. She was staying near the cashier's desk because she was too afraid to leave, worrying that without the supervision of the cashier, Will might try to attack her. She was waiting for him to leave. I told her I would pull up right next to the entrance of the gas station, and that she could just quickly walk out of the building and get into the car. She agreed, and I pulled up near the entrance. I saw her through the automatic sliding glass doors. She looked scared. We made eye contact. I nodded at her, signaling she could start her journey to the car, and she power walked towards the exit without breaking eye contact with me. I saw Will walking slowly behind her, and my heart nearly skipped a beat. I signaled with my hand to her to hurry, and she ran the rest of the way. I opened the door for her. She jumped in the car, and we sped out of the parking lot. I saw Will running full force towards his car. He got in and followed right behind us. We obviously drove above the speed limit. I know, not smart. What else could we have done? We drove for nearly 6.5 hours, with Will still following behind us. Bree and I figured that we weren't going to get anywhere by just driving. If we continued, we would just run out of gas, and possibly get murdered by Will, and no one would know what happened to us. We found a police station, and told the cops what was going on. Of course, as soon as we entered the police station parking lot, Will's car was nowhere in sight. The police suggested that we rent a hotel room and stay there for the night. They would have a patrol car in the parking lot, and they would have a cop watching for Will and his car all night. We felt a little bit better after that, so we did exactly as they said. We found a decent motel, and the patrol car stayed in the parking lot all night. The next morning, I woke up around 4:30 and got up to use the bathroom. As I turned on the bathroom light, I caught a glimpse of Bree's head. It was stained a dark crimson color. I froze, and my hands started to shake. I quietly said her name a few times, hoping that she would wake up. I slowly walked over to her bed, and I saw the blood that was seeping into her sheets. I so desperately hoped that she just had a period accident or something, but her eyes were so wide, and her skin was so pale, that I knew that's not what happened. I saw a piece of paper that had been torn off from the notepad on the nightstand, and it was resting on top of her head. It read, "You're alone. Now we can be together, my dear." I collapsed on the floor and burst into tears. My best friend was gone. I had no idea how he even got into our hotel room without the cop noticing, or how he even entered our room considering it requires a key card. I grasped the note tightly in my hand, frantically searched for and found my car keys, and burst out of the room. The patrol car was gone. I ran down the stairs and rushed to my car. I shakily put the keys into my ignition and drove to the police station. I told them what had happened. I don't know how they could understand what I was trying to say through my shaky voice and frantic crying. The police are privately discussing my situation in a separate room. So, that brings me to where I am now. I'm in the waiting room writing this out for you guys. I don't know what to do now. How do I escape Will? I don't understand how he could do this. Someone please help me. Give me suggestions on what I should do. I don't know how to get away from him. Thanks for listening, Wolfpack. If you want to submit your own story, the links for my email and subreddit will be down below. I've also created a Discord, so if you want to join that, the link will be in the description down below as well. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And with that said, have beautiful nightmares, and I will see you next time.